Hello guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, well thanks for checking out this video. So it's time for my next costume build. My next cosplay is going to be Ashamane from World of Warcraft. She's one of the wild gods. If you played a Frill Druid and you had the things of Ashamane, which you should have in Legion, this is one of the skins that you can have with that weapon, which I have on the screen here. So in this video, exactly, I'm going to be working on the bracers, which are what's on her front legs, the lower front legs there. I'm not doing like a fursuit or quad suit. I'm doing a like if she was a night elf type deal, but I'm using a lot of the elements from the character's design. So here I am marking out the base for the right bracer. At this point I already had a good bit of the left one started, so we are going to see the right one all the way through and then parts of the left one as well. So here I'm just cutting out the little details of my pattern now so I can get to tracing those out. And at the end of this video, these bracers are not finished. They're about somewhere between a third and half of the way through. So it's a process making these, but they're going to be awesome when they're done. So I'm just cutting out all the little details. I think the bracers ended up having I think 12 pieces, and I have one more piece to cut out still. Okay, so this is the left one. This is how far I got on it. And now I'm back to the right one, so I'm cutting out the smaller details now to kind of give things a 3D look. There's going to be different levels. And as you can see right there, the reason why I'm moving the paper over is because I'm using 6mm foam. And if I just trace the pattern exactly, the pieces end up being too short. So I have to add roughly an extra 6mm on. I do trim off any extra as I go, pinning them on and gluing them. So mark out all these. I think I have 5 pieces of these little pieces here, and then I have like 7 more pieces later that are bigger pieces. And I am just cutting everything out with a box cutter. Oh, and I'm tracing onto this black foam with a white permanent marker, so it's easy to see. And using a box cutter, you have to change these blades often. I think I went through an entire blade in one day, because I had like the ones where it kind of like snaps off and you can snap them off every so often, and I had to snap them off pretty often. So here I'm just kind of checking, I'm making sure I have it facing the right way, and you can't really see right here, but I have my heat gun out, and I'm just kind of sealing up the pores in the foam. This takes a couple seconds here. I do get better camera angles as we go. So there we go, we're at a better angle now. So here's the left one I have pinned. Everything's pinned but not glued on the left one at this point. And then here on the right one, I'm getting all my little pattern pieces out, and I'm about to trace them onto this main base piece, just to help me get things lined up as I go. Because once I have everything glued together and everything, which I'm, at this step, the Plasti Dip step I won't have done in this video, but once everything glued together, I'm going to coat everything in Plasti Dip, and then get to painting, so that'll be in a later video. At this point, I'm just tracing everything out so I have good guidelines to follow, but none of this, you won't see any of these lines or anything when I'm done. So originally, these little bottom sections I'm tracing right now, I was going to cut those out in foam too, but I decided I wanted to have a little more depth, so I didn't. So those I'm just going to shape with my tools later to get my different shapes, and then I'll use painting to give them more dimension as well. But I did want them to kind of have a different angles. I did reference directly from the game to create my pattern for these bracers, but I did notice when I was drafting them that a lot of things just didn't make sense. Like the smaller details, there were smaller details that just didn't make sense in real life. Trying to make them into a paper pattern just didn't make sense, and that's partly because when you look at the image closely, a lot of the details are just painted on to a 2D surface, so whenever you go to make a 3D model, it just kind of looks a little funky So I did take some artistic liberties to how I thought it would make more sense and look better in a 3D world. So here I think I'm tracing out more. I have to be like very precise with this, so part of this I'm kind of getting off where the camera is recording, just because I want to make sure everything lined up just right. I just have 2 more pieces to trace, it looks like, and then you'll be able to see what I'm doing again. I do have all my little pattern pieces numbered and have little notches, so it makes it easier to tape them back together when I'm done. Because once I'm done, oh, here I have everything traced out, I'm kind of showing. But yeah, whenever I'm done with my paper patterns, I tape them back together and put them in a folder in case I need a reference to them later. In case I destroy something or I mess up at some point, I'll be able to break out the patterns and start over if I need to. So here I just have it pinned in place because I don't want to glue anything until I know that I have everything cut out the way it needs to be. And now I'm cutting out those 5 detail pieces that will go around the bottom part of the bracer. And then after I get those in place, I'll cut out the top pieces. So yeah, at first I cut them just normal straight pieces, and then I kind of line them up on the thing to see if I have any extra, and I do have some extra on some of these pieces, so I trim them off. But when I trim them off on an angle. And that's just because it's going to go around a rounded surface, so the pieces will stick together better without having any gaps. And I also did like a zigzag shape with these. If you looked at that picture at the beginning of the video, it kind of had like a zigzaggy trim around the bottom, so that's what I was trying to do. I think it turned out pretty close. And in this video, I have all the foam pieces cut out except for 1 piece of foam for each piece, or each bracer, and that's because I needed to get 2mm foam. Everything else on these bracers are 6mm foam, but for the 1 piece that will be 2mm foam, it's just going to be it's going to go in the middle part, like the big open space in there. There's going to be swirls, but I'm going to use 2mm foam, put it on there, and then I'm going to carve into the 2mm foam these little swirly shapes. So that's the only thing I need still. Guess I haven't gotten that far yet. So I think I'm cutting out 1 more of these smaller details. I'm kind of shaping the pieces, or at least the rough cutting, as I go, and eventually I'm going to sand these pieces down. Today I'm going to pick up some more tools to do this, and you'll see that in the next video, all the sanding and more gluing. So here I am, just like on the other piece, I'm pinning those the bottom pieces into place to make sure everything's going to line up good. I like to make sure I pin everything in place because it just sucks whenever you glue everything together and then you get to look in and you're putting your last piece in there and then it doesn't line up right. So I always use stick pins first. Or tape. Sometimes I use tape, but stick pins are just more convenient. They hold better, other than you can't try anything on because you're going to stab yourself. But, yeah. I did check the base piece. When I first cut them out, I did tape them closed and then tried them on my arm, and they do work. They're the kind that's going to just slip over my arm. And since I'm going to do like a night elf character for this, I'm going to be making a bodysuit, and the bodysuit will either have Velcro or snaps, where these bracers will like snap onto, so they won't like slide around. Hold them in place and all of that. Still pinning those little pieces on there. And after I get these bracers up to the point where they're going to be painted, I'm going to stop, because I like to do all my painting at the same time, because I tend to mix colors, mix paint, and I'm not great at matching what I've done previously, so I like to do it all at the same time so I know it's going to match. But once I get these up to the point that they're ready to paint, I'm going to move on to the shoulder pieces, or upper arm pieces. And I'm going to work those up to the same point. I might save adding in the LEDs until after I paint those, because the way I'm going to do the LEDs, I could do it afterwards, then I don't have to worry about them. Those are going to be the other only pieces so far that I'm thinking of that will have LEDs. I think the mask might have LEDs as well. So here I am marking out the top pieces now. So these are all bigger pieces. I have them numbered 11 through 17, and 15, 16, and 17 are very small pieces because they're in that little curve. And if you're paying attention to the numbers on the bottom pieces, they're numbered 1 through 9, but they're odd numbers only. And it's because the way I numbered my paper, the bottom row is going to be even numbers, and the row on above that at the bottom was going to be odd numbers. But since I didn't trace out the odd numbers, I just have these, or I didn't trace out the even numbers, so I just have the odd numbers there. So I have 11 pinned on there, and I think that one's ready to go, so I'm tracing out 12. 13 is an awkward one, which I think I show it pretty well. It's the curved piece. So, and I had to make it a little longer than it was, so that was a little awkward, but I just kind of went from the middle instead of the edges, you'll see. Yeah, so I have 12 pinned on, I have it sliced at a little angle on the end. Now we're working on 13, which is that curved piece. The 14 is a really big piece, and then 15, 16, 17 are the little pieces you can kind of see towards the top right corner there. Not quite in the corner, but off to the side from the corner. See the little paper pattern pieces? And you can see I was not so sure about how to trace out 13. I couldn't remember how I did it the other time. I actually pretty much had made 3 bracers. My original one was way too small and I had to throw it out. Because I made the base and it was too small. So I made the new base, which is up there in the corner, the left one. And it was good, but then I traced out the small pieces. They were too small to fit on right. It's trial and error sometimes. That's how you learn. Yeah, here I'm pinning the pieces on, working on 13. I think I had it too long, so I had to trim some off here. But I'd rather make my pieces too big and have to trim them down than make them too small and have to start over on the piece. So then I'm not actually measuring to make sure I added enough. I'm just kind of looking at it and being like, yep, that looks right. So there are better ways you could go about this. At least measuring things. Getting everything done right. Oh, and when I'm tracing my pieces here, I am flipping over my patterns upside down because I am mirroring the bracers. I don't want to make 2 left bracers, I want to make a left one and a right one. So I'm making sure that I flip over my patterns. I think when I traced 1 through 9, I traced them the wrong way, so I simply just flipped over the pieces of foam and renumbered them. Since there's not a front and back to foam, it just didn't matter. But the rest of the time I made sure I flipped my patterns upside down. And then 14 here I added all the extra space, and then I think I didn't need any extra space. I had to cut it all off. So I'm going to cut on this one a few times. You'll see where I'm kind of have to mess with it. Which I decided to leave that in here just to kind of show, you don't always get it right the first time. Sometimes you got to play around with it. That's okay. You're not just going to cut it out and it's going to go straight into place. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't, that's great. But sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. You just work with it. I will say though, if you're using stick pins to poke your foam pieces into place like I am, be careful. Those pink ones are my new ones, and I stabbed myself so many times just by barely touching them because they're brand new. The teal ones I should have just been using the whole time because they're my oldest ones and they're not that sharp. Like you can start to touch them and be okay. Whereas the pink ones, you barely touch them and it's not fantastic. I stabbed myself so many times. But once I get all these pieces cut out here, I'm going to start gluing, and I'll show you what kind of glue I use. I know you're not going to see it for very long, so I'll tell you what it is, because originally when I recorded this, I was thinking that I wasn't taking as long as I was, so I wasn't going to really speed it up too much. But then I had an hour of footage, so I did a ×4 speed. So things are moving a lot faster than I had planned, so when I'm showing objects, it kind of goes by in like a split second. But I'll let you know what it is. And I will have my materials I use in the description below. So there's 15, and then I have 16 and 17. So I think I'm working on 16 right now. And 16, 15, 16, and 17, I don't think I needed to add any extra space, but I kind of did just a tiny bit because I wasn't super sure, and then I had to cut it off too. 17, I might have left a little bit of extra space just because it's at the seam. Like 17 and 11 touch, 1 and 9 touch, because they're at the little seam, the edge of my pattern that I had. So I did need a little extra space there. So I'm tracing out 17, which is the last one I'll be cutting out. And so I give myself all this extra space, and I'm pretty sure I don't need like half of that. But like I said before, it's better to have too much extra on there and just have to cut it off than have to completely cut a new piece out. Getting that all situated in there. Give it a quick little spin around. Okay, so in this point, there is, if you looked at the screenshot, there was like a second little fin thing in the background. I do have a lot of lines going off on this one because I just totally freehanded this real quick. I didn't remake it to make it pretty or anything. But yeah, so I just have this little awkward shape that's going to get glued onto the inside of it and stick out on the top. I didn't cut out a bunch of little individual pieces for these. Instead, I just traced out, I drew out how I wanted those little edge pieces to be, and I'm just going to paint them and shape them into those sort of shapes instead of cutting out more foam. So yeah, these are the last two pieces of foam. I lied earlier. I forgot about these. And I was just making notes on my pattern there. And then once again, I'm using a box cutter to cut out my pieces here. And I just have those jars of clips there to hold my foam down because I have my foam rolled up. That's how it was shipped to me, and that's how it works best for storing. So, but it does try to roll back up while you're working with it. So I just use these jars of clips as paperweights, basically. I use them a lot for my paper patterns when I'm tracing them on the fabric too. I'll use them to hold up paper patterns in place. So heat gun again. So the point of this is to seal up the little pores in the foam, which you can't really see in the video, but in person, if I held them at a certain angle, I could see in the light where I had applied heat and where I hadn't. It kind of changed, like, I think it was like slightly less shiny or something like that. It's hard to explain, but like if you hold it up to the light, you can see where you've done and where you haven't. So I'm just going over that. And then I'm kind of like shaping as well. And this took a minute to get finagled in there. For whatever reason, it was just an awkward little bit to stick in there. Because I had a certain way I went to line up, and it just was fighting with me a little bit. Yeah, I make sure that it's going to line up in there right. So that's pretty much how I want it to be in there. It's not quite in there how I want it, but as I said before, I can't stick the pins all the way through and try these on without stabbing myself, so the pins weren't really holding onto that piece of foam very well. So it did shift whenever I put it on. Okay, so now I'm about to glue everything. Now I already have this part done on the left one, so I'm just doing the right one here. And still not everything will be glued. There'll be like a few little things I haven't glued yet, and that's just because I want to sand down the pieces before I glue everything onto the base. So I'm using Weldwood, which is a contact cement. There's a few different ones you can use. This is just the one I had locally that I could get. It says it has a 15 to 20 minute dry time, but I noticed it was more like a 12-minute dry time. I'd check about 12 minutes later into my timer, and it'd be ready to go. So if contact cement, a mistake I've made before is I always thought that you're supposed to just have it tacky, and then it was ready to go, but it needs to be completely dry. Like if you touch it, your fingers shouldn't stick to it at all. So I'm coating both sides of the pieces I'm going to be touching together, because that's how it works. And I'm just using a popsicle stick for this. And I am wearing a mask. You can't see, I am wearing a mask. Stuff does have toxic fumes while it's wet. Once it dries, it's fine, but while I have that can open, I have a mask on. And my ferret is not in the room. I have her in the other room, running around. So I'm cutting all these pieces really quick, and then I cut out the video where I'm waiting for 12 minutes, and then I'm getting right to sticking things together. And I will say, the base piece, I don't have in the video very well because that piece is a pain to get glued together. So here we are, we're about to stick everything together. I'm trying to get this lined up, and I have to fight it a little bit. You'll have that. So once I get this stuck together, I do break out my heat gun, and I just kind of get shaped, because it kind of wants to glue together in an oval shape, and I want it to be more circular. So I just use some heat it up real quick, and use my hands just to kind of spin around and form it into more of a circle shape. And then I reference the base piece where everything is numbered, to show me what needs to be glued together where. So I'm just doing that now, and it's real quick, like it takes a couple seconds just to glue each piece together at this point. And then I do have to play around with getting things pinned back together, because whenever I glue things together, I'm too afraid to like pull on them. So my foam that's foam piece I have 1 through 9, it's one piece now. I wasn't pulling on it to get it down onto the surface right, so I had to repin it a few times. I was like, oh no, I have this space. But it was just because I had pieces poking up that weren't flat against the other piece of foam. But I get it eventually. Alright, so now I'm going to do that top trim, 11 through 17. And you can kind of see it off to the right hand side, that little top extra fin piece. I do have it traced out my little design now. And like I said, I'm not cutting anything out for that. I'm just using it as a reference for when I sand, and then I'll use pictures I'll reference from whenever I'm painting to kind of show me what I'm going to be doing, which you should be able to see from where I've sanded how I'm going to paint it as well. So I'm getting everything pinned together. So now the right bracer and left bracer are at the same stage. And here I'm just going to pin this into place to make sure it looks right. Make sure I got everything traced on there right. So yeah, this is screenshots from the game as well. So this is what it's going to kind of look like. A little different, because I just felt like when I tried to make a paper pattern, it just didn't quite make sense when I was trying to trace it on paper. It doesn't look like it when you look at it. The more I looked at it more, and the more I tried to trace it on the paper, or not trace it, but freehand it while looking at these pictures, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Keep an eye out for part 2. I'll be doing sanding and more gluing and all of that. And if you follow me on Instagram, I'll have a link below. I am doing like daily little snippets of what I'm doing.